What's good, Mike? How you doing? All right, all right. Am I coming through loud and clear? Okay, bet. All right. I'm waiting on one more guest to come through. Brother named Travis Terrace. He's a PhD. He's also a curator and a historian. We're gonna chop it up with you and him. We're gonna go back and forth for maybe like 10 questions for maybe like an hour, a little bit more. And then we'll get into your background, a little bit about why you wanted to you wanted to push back against the idea of an Afro Latino curator. And then we'll just keep it light. We'll just let y'all freestyle back and forth. It should be a pretty good night. What's good, Mike? Can you hear me? How about Travis? Can you hear me? Coming through? All right, cool. Cool. All right, we're counting down. We got about 3 minutes. Um, check it out. Travis, can you hand up real quick so I can see you hear me? Oh, I see you. Yeah, lean in a little bit. Lean back just a little bit more. There you go. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, bring your camera down just a little bit lower so it doesn't catch that light behind you. Right, that's good. All right, Mike, you look pretty good. Everything's good on your end. That's pretty good. You're good. Can everybody hear me? All right, bet. All right, cool, 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 cool. Okay. Yep, yep. I hear you loud and clear. I just got to do a little bit of housekeeping on this end, just to get the video set up right. We're down in like 2 minutes, and then we'll go. I'll get the background, and then we'll get right into it. I'll bring you brothers in. What's good, everybody? What's good? This is Torraine Walker. If you're just joining the show, welcome. If you're coming back again, thank everybody who got to the guest on the house today. We're going to talk about some things that have been heating up on social media when it comes to Black culture, Black history, and who curates Black history. We're going to start off with conversation. We're going to start a conversation talking about something that happened over the weekend. Last week, the National Museum of African American History and Culture in DC posted an ad for a curator of Latin studies. Quite a few Black people were displeased and expressed concerns as to why museums supposedly dedicated to African American history needed a Latin scholar on staff. Many prominent Latin influencers pushed back, saying that many Latinos are Black. In response, many Black people brought up the rampant anti-Blackness in Latin American cultures, to the point of creating online petitions to protest the hire. What I wanted to do tonight was just discuss the curation of Black culture, the gatekeeping of Black content, and whether we gatekeep too much and not enough. I wanted to bring in my panel today is really connected to this conversation. I'm going to bring in my brother Mike Baggs. This is the brother who started the online petition to push back against the hire. Mike Baggs is an entrepreneur and musician. He's the director of communications of the Blue Sentinel Marketing. Like social political commentary has been somewhat controversial in the day social media climate, especially over the last couple of days. So, Mike, how you doing, brother?
Hey, how you doing? I'm good, man.
I'm good. And I'm also going to bring in my other guest. Travis Harris, PhD, is the Director of Black Revolutionary Education for the International Black Freedom Alliance and the Editor in Chief of the Journal of Hip Hop Studies. Travis, how you doing, my man?
Hey, what's up, bro? What's up? What's up?
Hey, brother.
How you doing?
Hey, I don't know if it was my computer, but your mic was going in and out while you was doing the introduction.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you sound
Yeah,
better now.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know what that was. I got a pretty
Was
good
it doing that
line.
for you too, Mike?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
Oh, it might have been because I got my earbuds in. It could have been something like that. That could have been what
yeah. I thought it was just my earbuds, but I mean, I was able to hear them and everything. So
Okay, well, cool, well, cool. Well, let's get into it.
Oh yeah, they said it in the comments. There's like your audio is echoing, it's choppy, it's difficult to hear.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I might go back and switch back to my wired earbuds if it keeps going. We'll see. Am I coming through now though? Everything good?
Nah, it's like you sound like you're in the background.
A
yeah,
word?
it's in and out a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, I may have to tweak a little bit. Well, in the meantime, um, if you can hear me, I'm just going to go into the first question, and while we do that, I'll let you guys riff off of it. Um,
Okay.
Mike, let me ask you, um, what was it about the museum's job post that made you feel like you needed to speak out and be active against
Well, when I seen it, the first thing I thought was it's an African American museum, and it's crazy because I was just planning to go to that museum too with my family. I have a daughter and I have a fiance, and was planning to go there. So when I seen that, the first thing I thought was, what does Latinx? I grew up in Brentwood in Long Island, which is probably one of the biggest Spanish communities in the country. And I grew up with every denomination of Spanish you can think of, and never in my life have I heard any Latin Americans refer to themselves as African American. And then on top of that, they deny their blackness. So when I seen that, I thought it was very disrespectful. So I had to say something. Like I always say, I'm not an activist. I'm just a regular guy. I just started a conversation. You know what I'm saying?
it? But talk a little bit about that. When you first saw the posting, what actions did you take to push back against the hire?
Say that one more time.
Well, when you first heard it, what actions did you take to push back against the hire?
I can't hear the last thing you said.
I said, what actions did you take to push back against posting going out?
Well, okay. The first thing I did was I brought awareness to the situation. So and I didn't think the tweet was gonna go where it went. But it did, and the awareness that I brought. When I look at it like this: we have to. It's the African American Museum, and if I have to shame you into doing the right thing, then I'll do that. So the first thing in my mind is like I have to call them out, and it worked. And then I started the petition, and the petition really was someone suggesting, "Hey, start." I've never started a petition before, and someone suggested it, and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna do that." And so then with the petition, I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna email them." And then there's still more steps. If I don't get an email back, then the next thing is, like I told them I was gonna pull up. That was my tweet. If I see any Latinx or whatever, I'm going to pull up. And people know me for pulling up. You've seen what happened with that Emmett Till um, debacle with Carolyn Bryant, and I was
Mm-hmm.
there, and I filmed that, and the film and what I filmed got 2 million views. And again, like I said, I'm not an activist. I'm just a guy. I'm on code. They called for people to be there. I was just there. You know what I mean? So the next step for the museum is probably to pull up if I don't get a response back of clarity of what that means to have a Latinx curator, because we don't have any. There's no African American history in any of the Latin museums. First off,
Mm.
you know, um, it's not like you can go into there's black people that were killed in the Jewish Holocaust. There were Latins who were killed in the Jewish Holocaust. You don't see Latin American history in their museum. You don't see African American history in their museum. So why is it that our museum gets to be co-opted by every other group? Because it's not going to stop at Latinx. They're going to try to tie everything into that. So in my head, I'm like, we got to stop this before it gets crazy. And I think they got the message. They emailed me back, but it was a like a copy and paste email. But they said they was going to forward it to their higher ups or whatever. But it starts with the conversation. It starts with the awareness, and then it's action.
All right, Dr. Travis, what's your response to that? There's a conversation to be had, and it's a valid conversation that, Afro-Latino individuals have been very connected to Black culture. We could talk about Arturo Schomburg, who helped
Yeah.
put together the Schomburg Museum with Bruce Gritt. There's always been individuals. You can talk about the Young Lords who were connected to the Black Panthers in Chicago through Fred Hampton, but there's a different conversation about being an ally and being connected to the culture than representing a culture. And what do you say about that?
Man, I got a big response, but I think first, actually, the first place I want to start is I actually have some insider information. So for those who don't know me, I got my PhD from the College of William and Mary. Now, my advisor, I don't want to say his name because I don't want y'all to, but my advisor was actually one of the individuals, one of the PhDs who worked on getting the museum to start. Now, me and him had some conversations about this, and this, which, as you all can imagine, this whole thing was a fight. Like it was a fight from the very beginning. So he didn't give me all of the details of it, but he said, rest assured, we won and it's here to stay, because in our conversation, my concern was what's going to happen next.
Now, can you expound on that a little bit? What's going to happen next, meaning what now?
As in, I wish I can remember the details of the conversation because it was my advisor. So we were just talking. We talked about, we talked for 3 or 4 years about so many things. And I wish I can remember the details, but it was in the sense of, because they had to fight so hard just to get it to even come into an existence.
You mean the museum itself?
Oh, go ahead.
You mean the museum itself?
Right, yeah, the museum itself. Right, since they had to fight so hard just to get into existence, then my concern was that there would be some type of backlash or something that would either lead to, like, the worst thing happening, it being closed, right? Because, based on my life, I'm thinking about the worst thing that can happen. Like, for me, I'm like, wow, I can't believe we even got this museum, right? So the worst thing could happen would be it being closed. But now, as I'm thinking about on the spectrum, it's what we seeing today, right? In the sense of, it's not completely closed, but it's moving away from the original mission. And so I just want to give you that inside information because, like, you wouldn't have known that. Nobody else would know that. So that's for the listeners. Now, particularly for the Latinx piece, right? And I said this to you offline when I was explaining this. People quite often mix up ethnicity and race. So ethnicity is more about a shared cultural identity, right? And race is something that's completely different. And so because of that, right, there are people who could be ethnically Latino and be racially Black or be racially white. So on one hand, my first response is I agree with what Mike's saying, because it's like, are we now bringing it all together? Are we now moving towards, we use this gender non-binary term of Latinx, which, and Mike, and just to confirm you, there actually is a study on this. They said that 76% of the people had never, Pew Research did a study on this. They said that 76% of the people had never heard of the term Latinx. The other 24%, only 3% use the term Latinx, right? Let that sink in.
Yeah.
Only 3% of the people, exactly, almost most Hispanics, Latinos, regardless of race, do not exactly, right?
But
and this was a study that proved this, and I sent this to y'all in the private chat so y'all can see the study, right? So that's one thing. So then bringing it all together, Mike has a valid concern. So if there was a fight at the beginning to even get this museum into existence, and based on this private conversation I had with my advisor, who was one of the individuals who worked to bring this to existence, and me being concerned that in the future we was going to have problems, then what's going to happen if we let Latinx in, a term that's distant from the people, don't account for race, and then we start basically basically like a way to allow whiteness to come in. So my initial response is that.
Yeah, I want to. Before I want to touch on that point you just made, Dr. Travis. There's something that happens, and I know you know this coming from an academic standpoint. There's a thing that happens where a word means one thing, and then when you move it through academia, and when you start moving into like language that's really vague, you start flattening the language to where black means one thing that we all recognize it to mean something. But by the time you move it through academia, and by the time you move it through general discourse, it means something completely different. Same thing with like Latin or Latinx or whatever. You can use that terminology and you can use that academic verbiage to make it mean anything you want. It's sort of like the term of intersectionality. Yeah. If you look at the history of intersectionality as written by Kimberly Crenshaw, it means a very specific thing. But by the time it filters through academia and by the time it filters into the general public, you can make it mean anything you want. And I think that's what you're talking about. Am I correct?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, Mike.
Now, to your point, Torraine. Now, I am a huge proponent, and so I mean, shameless plug. I actually got a book out that I co-edited and co-authored. It looks at the intersection of Christianity, Christians, and hip hop. Mm-hmm. The book is on Amazon. Beyond Christian Hip Hop, toward movement towards Christians and hip hop. But in this book, right, I actually, because I am an African Afro-diasporic scholar, right? And from this perspective, I look at things from a diasporic perspective. And there is, we got so much history in this country of people who would be ethnically either Hispanic or Latino and black, racially black, right? So, because the first colonizers who came and either weren't as successful or had some success were the Spanish and the Portuguese, right? And where did it go? Latin America, right? Central America, South America, right? So, and some of the first people who came to what becomes North America actually came to Florida.
And that was the argument some people were making. People were making that argument.
And so it's for me, right? And for me, I'm not a black and white type of person, right? It's like it doesn't have to be an either or for me. For me, is what's the truth, right? So there is a long history of both Africans who were involved with the transatlantic slave trade through the Portuguese and the Spanish, and I lay this out in the book in detail. But there were so many migrations since the 16th century between both Central America, South America, up into the Americas. Then by the time we get to the 70s, 80s, and now, there's a huge contingent of people of what they call themselves Afro-Latino, right? Or Latinos who are black. So I would say we do need to have their presence, but we do not need this Latinx whitewash, basically moving away from the mission of the museum. I know that was a long answer, but
it's all good. I know you're a scholar, brother. I know you get it.
I'm listening.
You feeding the people.
Like I said, my contention was never about blackness in Latin America, Africa. It's not about blackness. It's about identifying as an African American descendant of chattel slavery. So a lot of the mentions that I would get would point out blackness. I never have a contention with blackness because when they come here, you're black. We say it, even though they deny it. We're like, you're black. So my contention is also Latinx also means the white Latins. And I mean that, you go to Puerto Rico, I've been to Puerto Rico plenty of times. I've got discriminated in Puerto Rico because they thought I was black from Bayamón. They're like, oh, you from Bayamón. I'm like, I'm from America. They didn't believe me. So they discriminate against their own people who look like me, who look like us. So my contention isn't that. My contention is that person who discriminated against me over my blackness is still considered Latinx. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I want to move on to one more thing because I'm glad you touched on that point because that's something I want to move into. The Caribbean, Central and South America, pretty much everywhere south of the Rio Grande on this continent, anti-blackness is a very strong cultural trait with a lot of Latin communities, and there's no need to deny that. We know that's the truth. I'm originally from Florida. I grew up in South Florida, and some of the most hateful and most discriminatory things I ever witnessed were coming from people who were coming from the Dominican Republic and Cuba, who were already ingrained with a lot of anti-blackness that they brought to America. And being in America, America feeds that beast as much as you want, as long as you can assimilate as far as you can. Even among, as you said, even among Latino people with brown skin, anti-blackness against African Americans exists, even if there's no African or brown skin people in their particular country. Of course, this isn't exclusive to Latin people, but it's a worldwide phenomenon. And a lot of a lot of the pushback I saw against you, Mike, was people saying either completely disregarding that, or they were trying to
Completely.
say that they were black too. But we know historically in Latin countries and in Latin cultures, they try to get as far away from their blackness and their African heritage as they
Hmm.
can. And all of a sudden, it seems like now people want to take advantage of that and they want to run with it. And so I want
Hmm.
to ask you, why is it no one really wants to address the fact that there is severe anti-blackness in a lot of POC communities, and or people try to downplay it? So I'll ask you, Mike.
Like I said, and I can only talk about my anecdotal experience. Growing up in Brentwood, if you know what Brentwood is, that's where the MS-13 were killing all the kids. I don't know where Trump went, and they had, the he was heavy on immigration, so he went to Brentwood to try to rectify what was going on. There was like a whole bunch of teenagers being killed by MS-13. Now, I grew up in that community. Not all Hispanics, Latin people are deny their blackness. I had a friend who was Dominican. He denied his blackness. I'm brown, but his father, old school Dominican, throw up the black fist every time he see me with
Hmm.
like camaraderie. There's a disconnect because when they get here, it's, oh, black people are treated like that. I don't want to be treated like that. Let me try to separate and get as far away from that as I can, even if they look like me. I've been to the DR. If you, I've been to the DR. There's Jamaican, a Jamaican restaurant on the beach in Sasua, right? And this Jamaican restaurant gets so much business. It's the only Jamaican restaurant in the area. And and while we were eating there, you had Dominicans coming over there, get the F out of here. We don't want you here. And I'm like, do you deal with this? He's like, I deal with this every day. He's like, but I'm not moving. I gotta, I'm not going nowhere. So I witnessed the anti-blackness, even traveling outside of where I'm from, and you can't deny it. And and again, my contention isn't with that. They're My contention is with them trying to equate African American history with Latinx history, and it does intermingle in some cases, like the brother right here was saying. But none of them identify as African American, and they would never identify as African American. And that's what I was saying. You can't be African American when you want to be, because now if you look in the mentions, they were saying, "Oh, we're African American," only to prove the point. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no. Where? When? When did this happen? When did all these Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Jamaicans, Haitians become African American? And they will argue to me that they are, in fact, African Americans. So I said, let's cut the bull. Because what is this really about? I said, so do you think you deserve reparations? And they said, yep. And I said, so that's what this is about. Because before our reparations movement and and all the eyes that's on reparations, they see the bad. Everybody sees the bad. And they're like, we have to try to find a way to link us with African Americans. So if they're getting a little something, we can get a little something. It's clear. I asked them specifically, any person talking that black, oh, we're black. I said, let's stop that. Are you entitled to African Americans, descendants of shadow slavery in America, specifically the US? Are you entitled to their reparations? And just about every single one of them said yes. And I said, so that's what, to me, that's what this is about. You're from Florida. You grew up with Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, just about every kind of Latin or Hispanic, whatever you want to call it. and I've never heard them talk like this. Never. And I was the only black kid in my in the my where I grew up predominantly Spanish. I was the only black kid in my circle.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard them talk like this. From growing up to now, it's just only till recently that they're using these talking points, and they're all circulating the same talking points.
Yeah, I will say
And
this.
I shut it down. Like if you look at on the timeline, I shut it down. They disappear when I ask specifics. You know. So yeah, what you gonna say?
No, I get it. I will say this: growing up, like I said, my friendship circle was like people from every island in the Caribbean because that's what you have in Florida. And
Hmm.
around kids my age, I didn't really hear a lot of this. Everybody was pretty much together. But once you started talking to their families and their older families, you started picking up that vibe. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's all 101 thing, but you definitely feel that vibe of like, yeah, we're black or we're brown. Well, I won't say we're black. We are brown. We're not white, but we're definitely not black, and we're definitely not African American. That was definitely a vibe you picked up from when you went to people's houses.
I do want to say one thing too, because one of my best friends is Puerto Rican. His name is Derek Nova. He's an artist, great artist, but he's a descendant of a man named Ismael Rivera from Puerto Rico. And Ismael Rivera was a black Puerto Rican, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in his music, he talked about the anti-black racism in the country. Like his music, he created music because of that. And my friend was telling me a story. He was like, and they're from Louisa. Louisa, if you go there, they look like us. Like I've been to Louisa, I'm like, wow, I feel like there's a camaraderie. Now the people in Louisa, where he's from, he said, and when they went to, he used to clean hotels, and the owner, you have to leave out the back door. You can't leave out the front door. And when he got famous, and when he became like a mega Afro Latino singer star,
Mm-hmm.
he went back to that hotel and was like, "You don't remember me." But I say all that to say this: his story, like there are some writers, and he held us down in that, like as far as what we were fighting for. He was a writer, and
Mm-hmm.
we have that. The thing is, in this generation right now, you don't see too much of that at all. Like my friend who's brown, his father, you can tell he's a writer. He in his car driving by, bam. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
why is why is he? He's like, because he was part of that back in the day, that whole movement, So I don't want to discredit any Latinos or whatever you want to identify as yourself, but we need to make a change now. We have to stop fronting, stop capping, you know?
All right, Dr. Travis, what do you got? What do you think?
Yeah, so I was looking up the term. I'm gonna mispronounce it. I do speak Spanish, but my Spanish isn't.
Yeah.
This is a hard word. The term is blanqueamiento. 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 If anybody interested, just Google that if you want to know more. But basically, in my research, I looked at this, right? And what scholars have found out is after colonization, there was basically this whitewashing of the race. So what you all are seeing is something that colonizers intentionally planned to happen. So everybody noticed that the majority of the enslaved did not go to what become America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the majority went to Central South America, etc. Even Puerto Rico, right? That term, Puerto Rico is rich port, right? From the colonizers. So what the colonizers did was, and just like what happened here in the United States, they saw they were losing control, right? So, I mean, because think about it, some of the first uprisings happened in that area, right? And the most famous one, of course, the Haitian Revolution.
The Haitian Revolution, yeah.
Yeah. So they saw that they were losing control, just like here. So then they wanted to implement ways to maintain control without using brute force. So what do?
Mm-hmm.
We say, okay, we can't control them. Right, and Mike did it. We can't control them physically, but how about we try to control their culture? How about we try to control their language? And all that comes together. So how about we control their mind and their thinking? So then, right, they implemented an entire system in which they say, you know what? We are pretty much going to whitewash. It's like basically like we always, Torraine and I always talk about this. Carter G. Woodson was right. So basically, this is a Latino version of what Carter G. Woodson was explaining, Blanqueamiento. So what they did was they implemented this. So now, just like in their education systems, in their media, etc., right? All of that went into whitewashing the race. So now you have people, and for me, it's actually disturbing because your ancestors came from Africa, right? Your ancestors came from Africa, and now instead of you holding on to your African identity, you're moving over towards and trying to basically get as close to whiteness as possible.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of the kids I grew up with was Colombian, right? And he would always have black jokes. And you know, we played the dozens. We joke we'll have you know how it goes. So, and I went to his house one time and I seen a big picture. There had to be 50 people in the picture. And in the middle of that picture, there was a black woman, darker than me, darker than you, just a black woman. And I looked at my friend. I said, I see your father in that picture with his hand on her shoulder. I'm like, who's that? Who's this lady? It's my grandmother. I said, how? Yo, you can never have no more black jokes or whatever. I said, yo, your grandmother's black. He was like, yeah, I know. And the most anti-black Hispanics, Latinos, whatever you want to call them, their grandmothers, great grandmothers are black. I mean, jet black. They try to really get away from that. But the picture is first thing when you walk in his house.
Wow.
The father's proud of it because he comes from that old school. But you're not. I'm 35, so the generation that I grew up in, none of them were proud of that. And I can give you stories for days. I didn't realize none of this until I got older. Like, wow, that's what was going on. You just brush it off when you're older.
No, you know what though? That's very much
younger.
a thing. And again, I don't want to single out just Latino people for doing this because this happens in pretty much every culture where you have this blending of cultures where it doesn't come voluntarily. I mean, if you look at the history, if you look at the real history of New Orleans, a lot of what you see in New Orleans, a lot of the caste system that we deal with in colorism in America comes out of New Orleans, and that comes from the French because there was a system it started in Saint-Domingue before the Haitian Revolution, where a lot of people who left after the revolution moved to New Orleans who were French and biracial and je ne connais pas. What that was, there was a system called plissage, where it wasn't technically slavery, but it was where a black woman could basically be the mistress of a white plantation owner, a white French plantation owner. They would be set up in houses. They'd be very small houses, but they would have land. They would have plots of land. But all they had to do was submit to a white planter every few days or so, create biracial children. And those children went on to become either overseers on plantations, and it went on to become the quote unquote talented 10th. That's a conversation that a lot of so-called talented 10th don't like to have, but that's sort of the baseline of where that comes from. So what I'm saying that to say that there's always, every time white supremacy goes into another culture or moves into another space, they always create buffer classes to try to buffer up their own numbers and to also dilute the ideas and to dilute revolutionary spirits of the people who they oppress. So this is something that goes on all over the world.
Bruh, Candace Owens.
You look at Jamaica, it's like, this is one thing in Jamaica they do. You can't call a Jamaican a nigger. Like, even in speaking, you be like, yo, my nigga. Like, you can't, they get offended. And you call them black, they get offended. And there was a song back in the day, it was like, who you calling nigger? Like, in the song, he's offended, like, who you calling nigger? Who you calling, like, so to your point, it's not just Latin America. We can see it in other cultures. Me, I've always been pro-black. I was a super Pan-African back in the day, up until recently, until I started watching. I'm an observer. Like I make my assessments off of what I observe, and then I make a comment off of what I observe. And it's never with emotions. Even with the post that you've seen or me clapping back on Twitter with this whole museum thing, it's never emotional. I have no emotions in it. It's just critical thinking. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mike, I might have to push you back though, bro.
Yeah, holla at me.
No, but on the flip though, along with what you're saying, Torraine, and I mentioned this, but I'm gonna bring this up. We got Larry Elder, right? We got Candace Owens.
Yeah, he blocked me.
We got black people who do the same thing, right? So for me, it just says that white supremacy is working. But I do want to be clear, right? Because like you mentioned, Torraine, I am a part of International Black Freedom Alliance, and we are working with, like, just 2 weeks ago, I was just on a call with people in Brazil. So just like Black people, like us, like shout out to you, Torraine, one of the few blue checks who keep it real. But just like us, who usually get silence, right? And you don't hear from us, and who you hear about, right? You hear about the Brittany Coopers and all that, right?
Yeah.
Just like that happens with us, that happens with them too.
There
are a lot of Afro-Latino people who are Black, who want to push their Blackness and their Africanness, but they're being silenced, right?
Oh, they was in the thread going in like, yo, how y'all telling African Americans? Like, I seen this a couple of Haitians, Jamaicans, Africans, like standing up for. They're like, this. Do y'all hear yourselves? Like, and
well, you know
it was
what,
good to see that. It was good to see that. I was like,
this is something me and Travis talk about a lot. A lot of times, a lot of this, I don't want to call it negativity, but a lot of this pushback you see against African Americans trying to stand on the fact that they have a legacy. There's a lot of people in these countries who agree with that, and there's a lot of people who understand that. The problem is, and I'm going to talk about that, we're going to move on to that in a minute. A lot of times the people who are the most vocal about pushing back against African Americans who say this are people who are in positions to be able to have a bigger microphone, like people in academia, people who work in the media. Because they're louder, they overpower everybody else. But I want people to listen and to understand that this isn't a conversation about pushing down on other people in other countries and saying that they're anti-Black and everything. We're just saying that there's an element of that exists. And because they're well placed, you hear them a lot more. That's what the issue is. I actually want to move on to something else as well. A popular expression among Black creatives is this idea of we create the culture. And that's true. Black people are the most imitated cultural representations around the world, African Americans, from hip hop to fashion, to clothes, to the way we speak, to the way we talk.
Technology.
Yeah, but I want to be clear. I think there's a disconnect here because creating the culture is not the same as owning the culture. And a lot of these things that we create, we do not own. Our expression is monetized by record labels, museums, social media, especially social media makes billions of dollars off Black culture in America just every day. But very little of that wealth gets back to the Black creators. Black culture seen as almost like a natural resource that anybody can pick and choose from, but nothing really comes back to Black people. And I want to ask you, Travis, do you think that some of the pushback against this, the Black Smithsonian, quote unquote, hiring a Latin curator comes from that?
That's a good question. I mean, let me think about that. So because we don't really own it, the cultural components, then
so what I mean is, like, so the way Mike reacted to the post going up for a Latinx curator, there was a lot of pushback as well from other people who were doing it. They just didn't get as much attention. And I'm asking you, do you think some of that's because we see so much of our culture get taken from us? And and the idea that a Black museum that's supposed to be about African American culture is starting to hire all these people from different cultures. Do you think that's some of that?
That's exactly it, right? And this is kind of what I was getting at. This is another way of getting at what I was saying when I was talking to my advisor. Can we have anything, bro?
Can we have anything?
I know I don't use a curse, Torraine, but damn.
It's okay, man. This is a grown folk show. You can do what you got to do.
Shit,
I always say this: our number one, America's number one resource is our culture. That's enough. That's what really brings a lot of money in. That's what brings a lot of attention. It's the culture that we created. So if you look at music, that's probably our number one export. Our music.
Yeah.
If you look at the money, and I told you I'm in the music industry in front. I was in the front, and then I became behind the scenes. The type of money that artists get or gets transported overseas is amazing. Like, it's crazy. So they buy into our culture. That's why you have people like Adam 22, who's a white man, but he's in the culture and he's monetizing our culture. And he's able to do it. You got Vlad, he's monetizing our culture. You don't think they see that? They're like, Let me go towards
what's that white boy Harlow? What's his last?
Jack Harlow,
Jack
man.
Harlow, yeah.
Oh my lord, this is why people piss, bro. Somebody, I mean, Twitter. Well, I ain't gonna lie, Twitter's a wild place. I've seen stuff on Twitter I've never seen before. But somebody,
That's usually where it hangs out. Twitter's kind of like the place where crazy stuff happens.
They make a Jack Harlow every 5 years. There's a new Jack Harlow every 5 years.
Like,
no, that's a fact. That's a fact. There's a new Jack Harlow every 5 years.
The talent
if not less
still is like way below, right? I know dudes around my block who better than Jack Harlow, right?
But everything in the industry and entertainment in itself is about money. It's about whoever has the bag of the machine behind them. That's why you can have a Tekashi 69 blow like that. You have a Jack Harlow who nobody ever heard about just blow up. When you have the artist like someone on your block who's probably been grinding for 15 years, but like I said, the industry is.
But the point I wanted to make with the Jack Harlow thing is, and bring it all together, what you was getting at, Torraine. Somebody said that Jack Harlow put more black women on than any black male rapper.
They need that.
Like, this is the same type of stuff. Did you hear me, Torraine?
Yeah, I heard you. Yeah, yeah. I'm just taking my head.
He's just like
what happens if you create a narrative? If you have the bag to go behind the narrative, that's the narrative.
Yeah,
you can't change it. Like you calling it out right now is not going to change it.
It's not.
It just is what it is.
But it's somebody in the chat
lie. Exactly, somebody in the chat said that's a lie. I had to put that up.
But this is why we so pissed, right? Because we constantly get BS like that. And so you're exactly right, Torraine. So when we get a Latinx thing that was supposed to be our museum, it's like, can we have anything? And so, yes, you're exactly right. It's a constant, okay, let's water down this, let's add in this creamer, let's add in this sugar. And it's
so the question is, what would have happened if no one called that out? Or it got to the level where it's at right now, where I was able to speak up and bring attention to it and start the petition. But what if that didn't happen? Then
I wouldn't have even known.
I wouldn't have known about it. So it would have been a free for all. I would have visited the museum and seen.
Oh my!
Yeah. I would have been like,
let me throw this in there. I don't know if this is one of your questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
But how many dope black scholars, black people do you know are looking for jobs right now?
Yep.
I know, bro. Listen, man. We're getting up.
And I bet you, if they give this job to some white Latinx person, bro,
they are. I heard this is what one of my followers said. This.
Let me respond real quick. I know. Look, man. I know there's a lot of black scholars who are qualified who are looking for museum gigs because they're in my DMs all the time. Every time I talk about this stuff, and I get people all the time telling me that they're looking for spaces, but they can't find gigs because a lot of this stuff, and you know this already, Doc, coming from academia, brother. A lot of this stuff comes from nepotism, and it also comes from people who are black, who are in positions to hire, but because they're so afraid of rocking the boat that they pick somebody who gets suggested to them who's not black, or somebody who's not going to rock the boat, who may be black, is not going to really do much good to you anyway. So I get what you're saying. Yeah, there's a lot of black scholars who want these museum jobs, who want to be who are qualified, but they don't get looked at. I get it.
I was looking at the pay that some of the museum curators and stuff get. Like I was on, you dive deep in the rabbit hole. I'm like 200,000, 150,000. I'm like, whoever gets this position is gonna get the bag. So you're putting money behind. Let's say if it's the Latinx person's gonna have money, right? They can. Remember, I told you money is power, especially in entertainment or just in America. Period. You're putting money in their pocket. They're gonna have power, right? They're in a position and they have money.
They be able to push a particular narrative that all the visitors that come to the museum will be able to see.
You're gonna have Trujillo in there, the dude who was killing the Haitians and telling them that we don't want black Dominicans. You're gonna have Trujillo in there. That's the first thing I thought. Literally, I was like, yo. That's literally the first thing I thought. But
you know what? No, I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to talk about that because here's the thing. You're absolutely right. When you get those positions and they're visible positions, you don't just get money, you also get influence. And that opens up a world of things because you end up when you have a position at a museum like that, you automatically open yourself to be open for like on public television. Then you become a public intellectual. then you would get a book deal,
probably get a-
and then the
yeah,
next thing you,
blue
and then the
check,
next thing you know,
another
here's the
blue
thing
check.
though, and the next thing you know, you're writing content, and then
you're gonna be on the reparations board. Oh, I work at the African American. I can be on the
exactly.
reparations board.
Exactly. And actually, I want to move in. Travis, did you have anything else? Because I want to move on
No,
to the
I'm
next
ready. I'm
question.
good.
Yeah.
And this one, I want Travis to take this one because I know you know better.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the support for the appointment came from academia and gatekeepers. Most of the people who saw that, I didn't put all the tweets out, but most of the people who were clapping and applauding this were people who were already in academia. And Mike, a lot of the response to you and a lot of the hostility towards you came from those same academics. So, Dr. Travis, I want to ask you, why is that? And why is Black academia so disconnected from Black people that they're willing to step on other Black people who have an issue with somebody taking over a spot in a so-called Black museum? You got it. Go ahead, brother.
So a lot of this started off like first of all, I love Black people. So I'm saying this in love.
Same
but
here.
A lot of these academics, I don't know if they ever been around Black people, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of them, they grew up like in the burbs, right? So they went to mainly white schools throughout their K through 12 education. So then when they go to college, they go into a PWI, and then where you think they getting their PhD from? A PWI. So literally all their culture, their life has been in these majority white spaces. It's so messed up now that I'm seeing people basically turning on their own family. And it's like, bro, like, what about your cousin? And because that's the thing, even though their family good, right? And as y'all know, as we don't really like to talk about our stuff, right? But those academics would be the family that's distant, the distant cousin, the distant aunt, the distant uncle. They not coming to the family reunions. They not. So because of that, right? I'm just giving a straightforward, right? Okay, they're distant from the culture. And then because they distant, bro, like, and I said this before on the show, higher education is the intellectual arm of white supremacy.
That's deep.
So because of that, and this is what Woodson said, even though they educated, right? Even though they Black and they mind, they still white.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, as someone who has a PhD, when I took my seminar courses, who do you think we were reading? White scholars. When I had to read foundational texts, right? I had to read Karl Marx. Southern Belle ain't my bad. Southern Belle's like, they sell out. She's like, you gracious, they sell out. She ain't no joke, bro. I hear you, Southern Belle. I just love my people, right? But look at this. They're reading. Look at what they're reading. They're reading Karl Marx, LeCure. They love Judith Butler, right? Think about this. If your favorite person is Judith Butler or Mike Foucault, right? Who most people.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say they worship Foucault.
They worship Foucault, who basically sex and molesting little boys. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah.
So think about this. If you grow up, you're in predominantly white schools, K through 12. When you get to you go to college, you go to a predominantly white institution. When you get your PhD, you're reading and citing all these white scholars. What's going to happen to your mind and your thinking?
Unless you
and the other thing is, because of this, right? Because you are distant from our people, and this is the huge part, there's no accountability. Who's checking you? And this is why I love growing up in the hood, bro. Because if you see some dumb stuff in the hood, dudes,
you check it.
What you talking about, bro? Like,
you check it.
About? And then, like, if you get crazy, you have to throw some hands, right? Like, you can't just say and act like that around your people without something. You about to say something?
Whose man's is that? I was about to say, whose man's is that? That's
right,
the first
exactly.
whose man's is that?
And my man, like, I had my man, he a rapper. He actually in Atlanta. I need to connecting with you, Torraine. But he can't. I had him come and teach, because I was doing a global film festival. He shoot videos, and he's cold, bro. Dude got mad skills. So I had him come and teach some video skills, shooting skills to the students. He was like, his mind was just like, who are these kids? And his first response was, it's something I'm never going to forget. He said, sometimes some people just need to be slapped.
Yeah.
And it's not in the sense of just all out violence.
Aggression or anger.
I know what you mean, but I know what you mean, but
I know what you mean.
Let me explain it for the people who may not be from the culture in the room. This is just metaphorical conversation. Sometimes it can get realistic, but sometimes it's just a cultural thing that some people never had any real conversations. Mm-hmm. Let's just say it like that. Go ahead, brother.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And that's the thing. You can say and do things without any accountability at all. And so I use that as a metaphor to explain this is what happened with these academics. Since they are so distant from our people, since and some of them may even be distant from their own family, right? Then when this stuff that is very detrimental, harmful, hurtful to our own people, they don't get it. Yeah. And so, of course, their minds so wrapped up into this language, it seems like they can care less that only 3% of the world, 3% only using the term Latinx. Like, oh yes, this is good because Latinx is gender non-binary. If we're going to include all the Latino folks, whether they are gender non-conforming, women, men, or however they identify, and all of that. So yes, celebrate this. Yay. Mm-hmm. And that's why.
And then you'll see Latinx LGBTQ in the community, in the museum, sorry. And like I said, we come from a community where stuff has to get checked at the door. And that's what we're doing right now. So even the mission that I took on, and like I said, I'm a regular guy. Like I was like, I'm taking on this mission. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I have businesses to run, but I'm like, I have to do this and I have to see it through to the end because I have to check it. And there's people who have my back, and like Torraine, he has my back. I seen him in the comments. I was watching. I'm like, man, that's what's up. I don't have to fight or explain myself a bit because I was explaining myself a million times. Like I'm like, I'm petty, so I'm like, I don't care if you have 3 followers. I'm gonna because I can use this because I need people to see this.
Yeah.
Like if you see what they're saying is, I don't have to say that. I'll say what I say, fall back, and then the community's at them. Like, what are you talking about?
I want to say something about that too, brother. This happens a lot, especially in the social media space, because I do the analytics on a lot of this stuff, and a lot of this information that filters through the community is coming from social media. And most people, I don't want to stereotype, and I don't want to generalize, but most people are trying to go to work and go about their day. They don't have time to really get into a lot of these conversations that me or you are having. So a lot of times when they see a scholar who sends something on social media, because of the power of academia in Black spaces and the power of academia in the Black community, they automatically assume, okay, well, because this PhD says something, then this must be the truth. The beauty of social media, the blessing and the curse of it, is social media, especially Twitter, is sort of like that barbershop in that street corner block where a lot of academics try to build their brand. But what they don't realize is that the people are out on social media too. And a lot of times, if you say something crazy as an academic on social media, people like you and people like Hood Scholar, especially people like me, be like, man, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
And usually one of 2 things happen. Either they completely block you, or they shut down altogether, or they move the conversation from the conversation you're having into theory. And Travis knows about rhetoric. They move the conversation into rhetoric and theory that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking about.
Nothing.
And what happens is the people see that, and they're starting to realize, man, a lot of these people don't know what the hell they're talking about, degree or no degree. So it's like you have to show and prove, and you have to show your work like you do anywhere else. So that's the one good thing about this.
Hold
up, Mike. Let me get Travis in here, then I'll come back.
Yeah, I just want to clarify because I'm glad Southern Bell said that. I am not saying that all Black academics are like that, but I'm talking to. I'm giving an explanation because I'm not saying this theoretically, like because since I've been in academia, I know these Black scholars, right? So, Southern Bell, to answer your question, 2 things. One, I'm saying this for the particular group who's going to be a man in this and rooting this on, right? So not all of them, but 2, and I do want to add this in. Academics are like cattle, bro. Like they're like herds, and if it's popular and other academics are liking it, then they just like, oh yeah, yes, go, right? Because Torraine actually knows some of these people in real life. And if you meet them in real life, they're pretty like reserved and like laid back and shy. And so they're just like they just going along with what's popular. Hopefully that clarifies it. So yeah, I'm not saying that all Black academics are like this. I'm talking about the specific group that will be who will be amening and praising something that's harmful and detrimental to our people.
What I was doing was, because I'm not an academic, I know a little something here and there, but I'm not an academic. Some of the stuff the academics were saying, I was just retweeting it. Like, I don't have to say it. They're giving dates, times, places, people, names, everything. And I'm like, I'm learning as I'm scrolling through the, because I'll watch every mention. I'm like, I'll scroll, and I'm learning, and I'm like, wow, just the conversation brought out the academics or the Twitter scholars or whoever, and there's a lot of information that was being disseminated, a lot, like a lot, and I appreciate it. Anybody who jumped on and commented their knowledge, everybody knows, you can't. I don't negate the knowledge. I'll read it if I agree with it. I'll retweet it. But even the people who are against it, I still read. Like, let me see what their contention is. But if it's just a lot of times online is just trolling, and I can troll. Like, you can't troll me and hurt my feelings. I'll troll you back, and people hate when you troll them back. And I'm like,
I do want to say this. I do want to say this. Really, that's what education and that's what discourse is supposed to be. People with different views and people who disagree, who can come together and disagree and still be respectful. That's whether you chopping it up on the block or when you chopping it up in an academy. That's what it should be. Right. Like to Travis's point, a lot of what we're getting right now is this sort of groupthink that happens in a lot of academia, where it's like whatever idea is hot, people either want to get on or they want to be camp followers, so they just rah and share whatever goes on. And if you move against that, then automatically they have a problem with it. I don't believe in the idea that you have to have a degree and you have to have this and just because you have a PhD or because you went to an academy or you went to the Ivy League that your opinion is valid and nobody else's is. That's how a lot of our people are messed up. And Dr. Carter G. Woodson said this a long time ago, and it's still valid. Harvard has ruined more Negroes than bad liquor, and it's the truth. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, a lot of our people have bought into that, and we have to get out of this idea that the only knowledge that's beneficial to the community comes from that world. It can be, but that's not the only place. I want to take a break really quick. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Shout out to Erica Lashai. I see she's in the chat. Shout out to her. She's a real solid sister on the West Coast. And I want to throw up some of my stuff really quick. If you like the conversation we're having and you want to keep having conversations like this, if you want to show some love to the channel, you can show me some love via Cash App, PayPal, Patreon, Venmo. Everything's all under Torraine Walker. You can also go to Venmo if you like what we're doing, keep it going so we can keep doing shows like this. And I can buy some more backgrounds and stuff like that so I don't have to be doing this from the backside. All right. I want to move on really quick. This controversy at the museum is kind of reminiscent of a controversy that happened a few years ago, and I think Travis remembers this, and Mike, you might remember it too. Back in 2019, there was a conversation that happened. The museum announced the hiring of a curator of hip hop, who turned out to be a white woman. There was a prominent DJ in Washington, D.C., who questioned this, and he just asked, why is the National Museum of African American History and Culture has a white woman curating hip hop music? And this brother was brutally attacked online by Black influencers, Black scholars, people who were very influential in academia and in museum curation. And many of them were connected to the museum, and they basically strong-armed this brother into apologizing for even asking the question. Now, the reason I brought this up is this. I pulled some numbers. And according to a 2019 study done by the Mellon Foundation, Black people make up only 11% of museum roles. If you look at the real numbers, and I'm going to pull that up right now, if you look at the numbers in leadership positions, when I'm meaning like curation, conservation, and museum curation and museum leadership, African Americans only make up 4% of all museums in the United States.
Wow.
The way that breaks down is this. As of now, there are only 21 Black curators of museums in the United States of America. This mirrors what we see in a lot of behind the scenes positions in Black culture work. The majority of, as you said earlier, Black podcast hosts, documentary filmmakers, and especially authors documenting hip hop and documenting Black culture and doing a lot of Black culture work are non-Black. And Travis, I want to ask you, how can we fix this if the Black gatekeepers who are in these positions accept the status quo?
Yeah, that's the thing, we can't. So I'm actually working at I guess I can say this publicly now. I'm actually contracted to work at Jamestown Settlement here in Williamsburg. And the story how I got it is crazy because for those who don't know, I was unjustly fired from my position in higher education. Y'all probably can tell why based on what I be talking about. So I was in between jobs and I was working security, and I ended up working security at this museum. They was doing an install, and I was like, I was breaking down the install. I was like, oh yeah, I remember when this first came out in the 17th century. It was because Jamestown Settlement, as y'all can tell by the name, that's just when it's a museum about Jamestown. It just so happened that the director of education was there during the installment while we were talking. So she was like, oh, wow, you know all this stuff? So then they brought me on as a contractor. Only reason, but I know y'all like why you saying this. I wanted to share that with y'all so y'all can understand the story. If I had not been there, I never would have been able to get that position with this museum. And I'm only a contractor. But this is the point. They needed scholars for this contract. And this is happening at museums all over this country. And based on my insider knowledge, unfortunately, museums function just like everything else. Who do you know? Is this your person? Is this your man? And y'all know how white culture works. If it's a white person, who are they gonna put on? Another white person.
Mm-hmm.
Qualified or not.
Oh, say that again?
Qualified or not.
Right. Bruh. Oh my Lord. So
that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole nother one, right? But the museum I'm at, they have a new, and this story about this, y'all not to be surprised by this, but this museum has a new director. The director is actually a Black woman who does not go along with the crowd, right? So she's actually a Black woman who cares for Black people. Now, once she came on and she started making changes, people who have been there for 15, 20, 25 years, guess what? It was like, deuces.
Yeah.
Because they was like, they're not going to go along with that, right? So it was her presence, her saying, I actually do, and I actually am going to tell the story of my people that opened the door for someone like me to even come into the museum. But if she was a gatekeeper, what you think she would have done? She would have kept those same people who were upset. She was like, oh, y'all are upset? Oh, okay, my bad. No, we don't need to do this. Oh, this is what y'all want? And if y'all, I don't know, have y'all ever been to Jamestown?
Virginia, right?
Yeah, Virginia.
I haven't been to there yet.
Okay. It's a pretty popular museum. And a lot of people come here and visit, like all over the country, all over the world, really. And if you come here, you'll see it's a white story, right? Forget about all the Africans and forget about all the stuff that we did throughout the history of this country. So what she did and what they were doing was they were telling more of the Black story. And as they told more of the Black story, the white people working there was like, we not having this, and we quit. Yeah. So this is what's happening, right? I share that story. It's a very on the ground story, but I share that because I want you to see the whole infrastructure from the people who work there. And let me be clear, I'm talking about curators, I'm talking about directors, I'm talking about operation managers, all of them, right? And that's another thing with these museums. People get in these positions and they stay there 20, 25, 30 years, right? So if they there for that long, then they usually, it ain't that much of a turnover. So then that's what it is. So this is pretty much a white infrastructure. So now that would explain it. Oh, we need somebody to curate a hip hop exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
Who do we know? Oh, I know this white woman. I know this white scholar. Let's go get her. Don't get. So I'm the editor in chief of the Journal of Hip Hop Studies, right? Don't
That's
get.
why I brought you on, because I wanted your input on that.
Yeah, don't get the editor in chief of the Journal of Hip Hop Studies, right? And because this is the other thing, bro. And I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I'm gatekeeping like in the journal.
As you should.
Because I get so many crazy submissions of stuff that, like, if y'all would read this, y'all be like, what? What are they talking about? And another thing, if I wasn't in this position, what do you think the journal will be publishing? Probably some crazy same stuff. Like, and actually, if y'all read articles, y'all probably don't. But if you go to the Journal of Popular Music, all these other journals, they're publishing this hip hop material by these white scholars. That's exactly how it works.
I always look at the name. I always look at the name when I read an article. I'll look at the name, like, okay, and I'll Google it, like, who wrote this? And you can see,
you can
like,
generally tell.
You'll know the biases and the injections of certain things. You'll be like, okay, that makes sense why they would put this.
And that's the point I wanted to get to, because you can almost always tell, even if you're just reading an article, you can pick up the energy and you can pick up sort of the tone of these articles, whether they're connected to the culture or not. And here's the thing. That's not to say that there aren't people who are non-Black who haven't been instrumental in trying to help develop hip hop and curate hip hop, but you don't see that happen with any other ethnic group. You know what I mean? People who are documenting salsa music, people who are documenting reggae, people who are documenting even especially rock music. The people who document that stuff are people who are either former musicians or very connected to that culture. You're not going to have somebody come over from a hip hop. I mean, you're starting to see it now, but you're not going to have somebody come over from a hip hop background and say, I want to write the rock column for Rolling Stone or Billboard. They'll run you out of the office. You know what I mean?
Can you imagine?
But that can happen in hip hop. And if you look at early hip hop writing before Nelson George showed up at Billboard and people like that and Chio Choker, a lot of the people who are doing hip hop criticism were coming from rock and they didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Go back and look at some stuff from the 80s.
Like I said, can you imagine? Let's say this brother right here goes to China and try to curate their cultural music, and then dictate what goes in and what goes out, what gets written. He's a Black man. They would kick him out of like.
You're gonna be on the first plane. You're gonna be on the first plane going out of Beijing that night, brother.
No other culture.
I'm like, bad and bring me back.
You be like, oh no, we're changing this. Actually, we're changing this. They'll look at you like, you changing what? But in our culture,
it's gonna be like that.
To your point, it's worse. Not only would they gatekeep, but they keep Black out, right?
They keep Black out.
Forget all the Black rock and roll musicians, right?
Yeah.
Forget all the So it's both gatekeeping.
It'll be like that scene in Kingdom of Heaven. It'll be like, thank you for your visit and get out of my tent.
Right.
But this is the first time. This is the first time I've seen this much gatekeeping in our community. I'm watching everything that's happening makes me so proudful. Like, I'm proud of my people. I'm proud of everything they're doing. The gatekeeping should have been done, but watching it is like you can't get nothing past me. Literally nothing. Like, we're on everything. And one thing company and brands don't like is negative things attached to their brand. So when we call stuff out, like especially the African American Museum, right now everything that's happening, there's gonna be like this is gonna be attached to them now. Like, oh, we remember when y'all try to let the Latin, we remember that, and it's gonna forever be attached. So if they try anything after this, it's like, no, we already checked you on that. So they're gonna be very apprehensive, especially when they see how many people are rallying behind it. No matter how much negative comments, like I said, people kill me online all the time. I laugh sometimes at things. I'm like, oh, that's funny, but doesn't matter how much negativity or how much you try to kill it. It's the gatekeeping only gets stronger from that. Because if there wasn't so much pushback, there wouldn't be as many people probably who ain't signed into Twitter for years. Like, they probably heard some, like, what's going on Twitter? They signed on, account has no picture. They have 0 followers, but they're like, no, I'm in it. I'm on every post, and I'm gonna help gatekeep this. I've never seen that, and I've been on social media since social media. You know what I mean? And it's just good to see.
No, trust me. Social media people. I know Dave Chappelle said Twitter's not a real place, but when it comes to business and when it comes to marketing, Twitter is definitely a real place. A lot of companies, people don't realize this. A lot of companies don't even make a move when it comes to their marketing until they start checking what the social media metrics say. They
Mm-hmm.
don't. They don't. And this is what I also going back to our other point. This is what I really try to get a lot of Black people to understand that these companies and these brands, they're watching every single thing that Black Twitter does. Everything that we do that
Everything.
goes viral, everything we say, our conversations, even the jokes we tell. Wait about a month and go turn on TV and see if it's not on there. Just doctored up a little bit. And I think that's what we have to get back to. We have to understand the power of our culture. And we have to understand the value of our culture and stop giving it away for free.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're starting to see a little bit of that come back, but not enough. Go ahead, brother. I see
So,
Dr.
yeah,
Huskell got
so
his hand up.
real quick. One, I also was thinking about the museum positions. A lot of Black people don't even think about going into curatorial or museum positions, right? So that's something that we should be kind of emphasizing more. And because that's the thing, right? When we go to museums, they boring, they dry, nobody want to be inside of them. We need to re-envision the potential possibility of what would happen if we were the ones telling the story and how fresh and how dope that joint would be, right? That's one. The other thing, shout out to Atlanta State Fire about the Morehouse position, right? Just to give y'all some numbers. First of all, there are only like black academics only make up like 3% of the academic population, similar to like curators, what was only like 4%, right?
Yeah.
The problem is a large percentage of Black academics are in non-tenure track positions, just like they aren't in those steady positions in the museums.
Can you explain that a little? Can you explain what non-tenure track means just for people who may not understand? Yeah.
So basically, in higher education, you have you have tenure track and non-tenure track. Tenure track are permanent positions. That means pretty much no matter what happened, if you get a bad student evaluation, there's hiring cut. I mean, they're hiring freezes, they're cutting people. You have job security, right?
Like teachers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Non-tenure track are adjunct professors, lecturers, visiting professors, research associates, like that. So a large percentage of those Black academics are working like the adjunct positions, or they're a visiting professor, which means they might be there for 1 year or 2 years, right? Or they might do a postdoc, which means they're only there for 1 year or 2 years. So the reason why I'm bringing that up, going back to Atlanta State Fire Point, hopefully y'all saw that, Morehouse hired this white woman. How many of these talented, smart, intellectually dope scholars are not getting these positions and basically being forced and stuck in these adjunct non-tenure track positions where when we have openings like this next one in the museum industry and these tenure track positions at a historically Black college, I ain't gonna lie, I was pissed when I heard that.
As you
and
should.
then think about this. She said a white woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
At a male college? Torraine, think about the conversations we've been having on Black misandry, right? And how many Black male professors are adjunct right now who are applying for tenure track positions but can't get it? So that's why it's so many points. There's so many parts to this problem. It's not just, they just going to hire this Latinx position that's probably going to go to some white chick.
I have a question. Can you call for the Morehouse? Could you call that out too, like on a public platform, to where you shame them into like I always say for clarification, what is the reason for this? If you have all the Black academics, as you say, why is there a white woman in that position? And like I said, the power of social media right now, if you call it out, I would call something like that out, because that doesn't make sense. You were mad about it. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, call it out. We're in the age now where you can call something out, and either they'll hide or they'll have to address it. And if depending on how they address it is how you take action. If they address it in a way where they're brushing it off, you just disrespected you disrespected the whole thing. You disrespected the people who go there, the people who work there, and that's going to be attached to you, to this college. This is what I'm saying. The power of just saying stuff. Press releases, and I'm doing a press release for the museum thing, and I'm like, if I don't get a response back, I'm in marketing. I have all the connections. If I do a press release, it will be everywhere on every page. Well, if they pick it up, they might. Depends on who want to touch it or not, but it will be sent out to everybody, and it's not hard to get something sent out to Fox, CNN, ABC, because they're always looking for content, especially controversial content. If you write it a certain way, and like even with mine, I write. I'm a good writer, but I'm having someone like, yo, you look over this for me. So when I do submit it, it's like, oh, we're gonna pick that up. It's easy to write your own press release and submit it out. If someone has a contention with that position, write the press release and send it out. It's not hard, and that's what that's what I'm good at explaining is that.
So, Mike, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
The problem with that is because, like I was referencing Torraine, with these anti-black misandry on that we deal with, unfortunately, the groundswell and the support that you got,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we'll get the same support because a lot of these people, unfortunately, a lot of these black academics, they align with black feminism.
But listen to this.
Oh,
It doesn't have to be an academic calling it out. It can be a regular person observing, and they can call it out, and people will get behind it. Whoever gets behind it, because I know in the certain positions that academics are in, they can't say certain things because then it's hard for them. I understand that, but a regular person like me, call it out. If you
yeah.
have friends with platforms who don't care about getting killed online. Like I don't care about getting killed online because it's not. I don't report to nobody. You know what I mean? So you have people like me that will be like, all right, that's what you're rolling with. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing, and people will support that. I'll support that if you had that contention back then, and I seen it, and I know you. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get behind it,
Yeah.
and it'll go where it goes.
I
But
think
you can always count on the
Go ahead.
regular guy.
Let's have Travis
Yeah.
speak.
I think the problem with this though is that like how those academics were fighting against you in the
Yeah.
museum situation, and they fight against you. If they fight against this situation, then Morehouse will be able to use that to their support and say, "Look, we got other academics who support us, who got our back." Unfortunately, academia is like this real. Pretty much, it's just a small circle of.
It's like a club.
Yeah, it's like a club. So if other people in the club supporting them, then they'll be able to get off because other academics got their support. So like with the museum, it's different because museum really depends on the masses of people coming in and bringing
Yeah,
their dollars.
that's a fact. Yeah.
But for Morehouse, then it's a tight knit little community where if other black academics are supporting them, then they good.
I can tell you for
I
a
have a
fact.
question.
Yeah, I can tell you really quick. A lot that circle, that CAU circle, because it's in this very small circle. You're right. All these groups and all these academics in that circle kind of know each other, and they back each other right or wrong. You know what I mean? So it's really tricky to get into that. The only way you can really penetrate that is from the outside. If you get a groundswell of people like Mike was saying, who have an issue with something that's going on in the college, then they can move that way. Or this is another option, which is kind of tricky. If you have students inside who are inside the academy who are disgruntled and have an issue with something to push back. You mean like the situation that happened at Howard last year with the when they were complaining about the substandard living conditions, and that got to the point where you had CNN and everybody coming down and putting light on Howard, and this is supposed to be, the jewel of the HBCU
They got all that
universe.
money too. It's not making sense.
Yeah, but I'm just saying though, that's how things have to happen. Either have to happen from inside or outside pressure, because academia, as Dr. Travis said, is a very insular, tight knit group. So it's tricky to get into that. And plus, people want jobs, and that's the other part of it too. And so it
Yeah, that's
takes a
what I'm
lot of
saying. You
courage out of
can't say.
people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that aspect.
I want to move on to something else though. But go ahead, Mike. Did you have a point? And then I'll move on to the next thing.
Oh no, I was gonna ask him a question. Let's say when that situation happened and you called it out, would you have people that would back you and be like, I'm gonna ride with him because this ain't right? Like in that club, would more people back you on that, or be like, no, we don't care about it. We want this lady to be in that position.
Man, so academics scared, bro. I hate to say it, but like us, we ain't never scared. We ain't never scared. And real talk, bro, I'm more outside of academia, like, because I'm a freedom fighter. That's why I was like, I might have to connect. I might have to bring you back, because I'm with Torraine and I'm out with the people, right? I'm on the ground. Like when stuff popped off, I'm getting tear gas, rubber bullets.
Let me set this up so if people don't know. I first met Travis in St. Louis and Ferguson when everything was jumping off, and we were out there for the 5th anniversary of Mike Brown's killing. So that's how we actually clicked up. But we had known each other way before then. So that's what I know him from, and I know he was on the ground doing a lot of work in the community way before that. So that's what I'm saying. So he's a different type of academic. He doesn't sit in the ivory tower. He's right there outside.
No, that's good. That's good. Like I said, even with the there's another.
But go ahead. Let me have Travis finish his point. Then I'll swing back to you. Go ahead, bro.
Right, cool.
Oh yeah. So because of that, right? No, they're not gonna support me. Other academics they're not gonna ride with me. It'll be
I'll ride with you, man.
Right. That's what I say. It'll be easier for me to organize people outside of academia than it would for me to organize people inside academia.
And it's tricky. It's even trickier when you're dealing with journalism. Like, people don't know this, but I actually am. I'm an accredited journalist, and I've got maybe 50 to 60 bylines. And I'm tight with people who are inside like mainstream media and in academia. And trust me, man, my DMs are full of people who say, "Man, I support what you're doing." And I'm like, "Well, let's try to get this initiative going." Then it's, "Well, I don't know about that." I don't know about it.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying. On the one hand, I understand that, because if your livelihood is tied into you towing a line, I get that. If you have mouths to feed and you got kids. But if you say you stand on something and you're in an institution that's supposed to be speaking truth to power, whether it's academia or whether it's journalism, at some point you got to figure out what you stand for, or you're just wasting time and you're taking up space. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a fact.
Let me move on to the next thing. I want to talk about black money. Every other ethnic group, if they have a wealthy upper class, or if they have an upper class, a lot of their upper class signals a lot of their wealth by giving back to the arts and funding their own arts. Like if you look at PBS, you'll see these things about MacArthur Foundation and the Ford Foundation. All these are billionaire corporations and billionaire families who are funneling some of their money into supporting the arts. You don't see that as much with black upper class people and wealthy black people, even though, of course, we don't have the same numbers that white people do when it comes to like extremely wealthy families, but we do have a number of people with high wealth in the black community, whether it's athletes, whether it's actors, whether it's entertainers, whether it's people who actually work in corporate America. How come we don't see as many people who are in these spaces who are very affluent put energy into like creating new black scholars and black curators for black art? And Travis, I want to ask you about that.
Yeah, so it's twofold. One, we don't see it because they don't advertise it. So I know personally people who have given, and they just don't publicize it. So you don't. I'm trying. Now I almost want to say that name, but I don't want to say that name. So some of it is happening, and we don't know about it. The other part is it's more on the, like, a lot of these people, they have like money managers and let's just call them money managers, right? So the way it's set up is actually designed for them. It's pretty much designed for them to go give to these particular organizations, right? I would say the best way to think about it is like, say somebody bidding on a contract, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna try to make myself available to get this contract, and then they get the contract. It's the same way with this money. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of these people um who have a lot of wealth and income, they're given just like white people, right? So they're not specifically, and let me be clear, these are the ones who aren't given that we don't know, that who are given that we don't know about. I'm talking about the ones who are given. They are given, but they're given just like white people. So when they give just like white people, they aren't given to the black organizations, to the black creators, etc. Lastly, the third point is they are given, and they're given to Black Lives Matter.
Oh Lord, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, and so just some insider knowledge. The people I know who given, they gave. It was like, oh yeah, we gave. They was like, because they know, because y'all know I'm an organizer. It was like, oh yeah, we gave y'all money. Because in their mind, listen to this, y'all. Sorry, thanks for giving me the opportunity to share this with the masses, because most people don't know this. What happened was a lot of people gave to Black Lives Matter, and in their mind, they thought by me giving to Black Lives Matter, it's going to the people who are doing the actual work. So the conversation that me and my comrade had in the organization, we was talking to somebody, and it was somebody pretty well known. It was like, oh yeah, we gave y'all some money already. So they thought they gave us, like the International Black Freedom Alliance, because, and my homie, he's in Ferguson. I just tell y'all who. So in the IBFA, I'm in the IBA with Torraine Russell. And Torraine Russell was one of the frontliners in Ferguson when it first popped off, right? And so they was like, yeah, Torraine, we gave y'all some money. And Torraine also works with Mike Brown. So they thought that they had gave Mike Brown, they had gave Ferguson organizing activists money when they gave the Black Lives Matter. Later on, as we all found out, none of us got that money. So that's the thing, they thought they were doing it, but that's it.
Okay. Mike, what are your thoughts on that? About people with high levels of wealth who are Black trying to curate our legacy the way we should?
I know there's a lot of people with wealth that like are entertainers. I can always point to some of the entertainers who do stuff behind the scenes. You gotta understand, once you become like you look at someone like LeBron James, look at someone like Diddy, who does a lot for New York, like Harlem specifically, but it's never publicized. What happens is it can't be publicized because they don't want the image of a black man giving back to be publicized. And so we never hear about it. But and another aspect of it is the fear. Like if you're seen giving back to the community, you can be a target. Look at Bill Cosby. He's done a lot for the black community. And the second he allegedly was going to buy the network because Bill Cosby, what happens is his legacy is the fundamental black family. You know what I mean? And he was going to bring that to the network. They didn't want that. They shot him down. You have someone like Kevin Hart who gives back also, and they shot him down. He must have been probably giving back too much. His dream was to host, what was it,
The Oscars, the Academy
the
Award.
Oscars. That was his dream from the beginning, and they stripped that away from him. And Kevin honestly hasn't been the same since then, and he's been very careful since that. So sometimes when you try to do stuff in the public, it can come back to bite you in the ass. But that's just the gift and curse of having money as an entertainer or someone who's wealthy.
All right. Last question, and I want to throw this to both of you. What would you like to see come from this issue, and what will be a satisfying resolution to this? And Mike, I'll start with you.
With the museum,
Yeah.
like I said, I only ask for clarity. That's literally the only thing I'm asking for. And if if they clarify what they're trying to do and it doesn't minimize our legacy, I'm cool with it. If you're not trying to co-opt our legacy, I'm cool with it. But when you don't respond back or you just ignoring it, because everybody knows what's going on. I'm pretty sure they're getting phone calls like, "Yo, you see what's going on?" More and more people are on this, and if you ignore it, then we're gonna have to. Me personally, whoever wants to come, I'm gonna pull up and I'm gonna protest that personally. But I don't think it's gonna get to that. I think we're gonna get clarification. I think they're gonna fall back a little bit and probably they're gonna have that position, but I don't think whatever they was planning to do, they're probably not gonna. It's not gonna be to the extent they was planning on doing it. That's what I think. I don't want to get to that point, but it looks like it's gonna get to that point. So for me, my end goal is being in front of that museum with about whoever comes with me. I can rally people, and we're gonna be outside the museum protesting that.
All
That's
right,
my end goal.
got you, Travis. What are your thoughts? What would you like to see come out
Man,
of it?
number one, if it does move forward, then hire a black person, and if they Afro Latino who's for the people, right? Not a gatekeeper or who's gonna do something trifling like, nah, none of that,
Hmm.
right? So first, hire a Afro Latino who actually care about black people, or cut the position,
But
right?
there's African Americans who have because the qualification they wanted was Latinx studies. There's African Americans who have degrees in Latinx studies or
Who are
whatever.
dope. Mark
You
Perry
know,
in Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
shout out to Atlanta State Fire saying that's why Torraine needs support. Let me put that up again. I appreciate
yeah.
that. This brother's been real active. Maybe brother or sister, I'm not quite sure. I can't tell by the picture, but shout out to you. Much love. I appreciate that.
yeah. So
Go ahead.
yeah. So clarification is all me personally when I ask. That's all.
All right. And I think we'll land our plane there. Mike
Yeah.
Baggs, Dr.
Yeah.
Travis, Hood Scholar. Thank you, brother, so much for coming through and chopping it up with me, man. Thank you for
Bro.
helping out with the people, man. Travis, what you got next? What you working on?
Oh man, actually, so the dope part, it's crazy how all this is happening because I actually am working on a project with this museum, and maybe we should publicize it because they doing it right. They giving me the opportunity to bring in. I'm actually creating a committee right now, and I'm going to the community that I live in. I'm getting black folks from my community. They're going to be a part of the committee, and with me working contract, them in community, and the black woman who's in charge, we're actually going to be able to tell our story, right? So I'm working on that. I got a couple other, some big things I'm working on. I don't wanna share yet.
All
So
right.
we gotta talk offline because I would say I got this potential way of bringing black people around the world together in the media space.
Yeah, definitely keep that on the hush till we speak. So.
Yeah.
All right. Mike, what you got going on outside of turning up in front of the Smithsonian?
Right, man, I got a lot of stuff going on. I do music, so I have a right now. If you want, you can stream. I have a record with Snoop Dogg. It's called Running. You can stream that. That's good for me. Um, right now, I'm focused more on just buying land. That's what I do outside of entertainment. I buy and sell vacant land, and I also teach how to buy and sell vacant land. So if you want to learn, you can also hit me up for that. And that's really it, man.
All right, that's where we're going to land our plane. Thanks to everybody. Thank you again, Mike Baggs. Thank you, Dr. Travis Hood, Scholar Harris. Um, thank you for Black. I enjoy all the knowledge and truth from these brothers straight up. Black Paladin, thank you so much for that. Thanks so much for everybody who came through to listen to the show and pick up some game. Appreciate it. Thank you so much to everybody who's listening. This will be going out again on YouTube in about an hour once this all renders. All right, brothers, thank you so much for your time, brothers.
All right, thank you, man. Appreciate you both.
Peace.
All right. And everybody else, y'all be good. Have a good night and much love.